Doug Smith. I'm the chairman of the 375th Steering Committee, and I'd like to welcome you all to another lecture by our town historian, Jim Garman. The topic, as you know, is Island Park. How many people are from Island Park? Your hands. Okay, good. So we got some history right here. Before I bring Jim on, I'd just like to mention a couple things. In some ways, we sort of made history on Sunday. I don't know how many of you folks know where Founder's Brook is, but you should be able to find it better now because there's an actual sign up, and there's actually, you drive in, there's a little parking place. When you walk up, you'll see some stones, and for the next couple of weeks at least, the lady that had the stones put in has also put up some visual art, kind of pictures and things of drawings of Anne Hutchison and some other things of interest. They'll still be up there, just as they were on Sunday. So I encourage everybody in Portsmouth to finally take a shot, drive down there, walk up, spend 5 minutes taking a look. It's a beautiful spot, and I hope all you guys will go up there and enjoy it. Without further ado, then let me bring on the real star of the show, Jim Garman, and he's going to talk about a topic that is really kind of my favorite place in town. I think I don't live there. I live in Pecasset Heights, but I go there a lot. Okay, and that's Island Park. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Doug. Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to another in a series of History of Portsmouth Talks, brought to you by the 375th Anniversary Committee and the Portsmouth Free Public Library. I hope you'll continue to join us for all the activities of the 375th, especially Labor Day weekend, when we will be hosting with a number of events the Lord Mayor of Portsmouth, United Kingdom. And I think that's going to be a really special weekend. We got all kinds of activities planned. I hope you all join us for that. Tonight's lecture is about Island Park, and the major focus of it is during the days of the Amusement Park, which is essentially 1897 to 1938. And I'm going to focus on that once I really get started with this. There are a lot of aspects of our town's history that are really important. And what I'm trying to do with these lectures is to pique your curiosity a little bit, give you a little bit of a taste of the history that we've had here, so that you can explore it further. Our library here has pretty good resources on local history, and I would really encourage you to use the library. There's some good stuff here. There are two people to whom I am especially indebted for the material for this presentation. First, the late John Pierce, who gathered together a considerable collection of photographs, photographic images of the town, and especially of Island Park, but also other parts of the town as well. And his collection was donated to the library. And it's here, and again, use can be made of that. The second person I would like to thank is my wife, Dottie, who labored long and hard on this project, putting these presentations together for me. I do them very rough, and she puts her expertise on them, and really, I mean, some of the pictures are really dark, and some of them are really too light, and sepia tone and everything else, and she brings it all together, and I really am grateful for all that she has done. And you will appreciate that as you see this, because you should have seen it when I started. Just a few comments, and then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pictures, probably about 45 or 50 pictures altogether. But a few comments about it. The northern end of our town has really played an important role in our town's history. And I'm talking about the entire northern end because, first of all, that's where the first settlers came. They came in the town pond, and they settled in the backyard of the Roger Williams Conference Center in that area, and where right in that's where all the first houses were. And there was an archaeological dig done down there about 1970, and a lot of artifacts were found. And there's a whole case in the other room full of artifacts that were brought up, a lot of pipe stems and things like that from the original settlement. So it was really important in terms of the founding of the town. The Hutchinsons, the Coddingtons, the John Clark, and other people all had house lots down there in that area. So it's very important for the beginning of the town. Unfortunately, in 1639, it got too crowded, however. There were 35 people there. And so 9 of them, and there were other reasons for that, by the way. There were political and religious reasons. 9 of them left and moved on to found Newport. And Newport is about to start their 375th, January 1st, but they're not going to have as much fun as we're having with ours. Also, the area of the northern end of the town also was important during the Battle of Rhode Island, because it's the area where the American soldiers came across from Tiverton, more or less in the vicinity of where the Stone Bridge is today, or what's left of the Stone Bridge is. And they came across that area and engaged in the battle. And if you want to know what happened about after that, you're going to have to come to the next lecture. But also it was an area in which they retreated off the island as well after the unsuccessful campaign of dislodging the British from the island. So it also was the location of a number of summer colonies. Summer colonies, for example, at the Hummocks in 1890, the land in the Hummocks was owned by the New Haven Railroad, and it was developed into house lots, and also Common Fence Point. Common Fence Point's kind of interesting because I have this brochure that looks brand new, but it isn't. It's an original, and it's a publicity brochure for building your summer home, your cottage in Common Fence Point. And not only does it, I'll read the first paragraph, and you all will appreciate this, I'm sure. Where summer zephyrs whisper to the wave-kissed sands and golden sunlight sparkles on the blue waters of Narragansett Bay, a wonderful new summer land has been created for you, planned for your pleasure. Common Fence Point Beach, but a few miles from world-famous Newport, is fast becoming a great summer community. It goes on in that vein. But also what this brochure does have, which is really kind of interesting, get it right side up here, it has a plat map for all the lots. You could buy a lot there, okay? And this was all run by a man named Henry Brown, who was from Brockton. And there were a lot of people that moved in there in the 20s from Brockton and Taunton and Fall River as well. But anyway, I'll leave this up here. You can take a look at this after I get done. Okay. And of course, the main focus of what I want to talk about tonight is the beginning around 1897. Island Park showed the beginnings of what was called a trolley park, which was begun by the Newport and Fall River Street Railway Company. What's a trolley park? Trolley parks were very common in the United States, really, in the late 19th, early 20th century. Electric railways, as they were called, trolleys, streetcars, there's all kinds of different names for them, the first ones appeared and replaced horse cars that had existed before in Richmond, Virginia in 1888. But the whole concept really took off quite dramatically throughout the country. I was born and raised in the city of Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has enormous, I shouldn't admit I wasn't born in Portsmouth, it has enormous trolley lines for many, many years. It doesn't have much anymore. They have some light rail. But the first trolley lines in Newport were established as early as 1889, and those were crosstown lines. Those were lines to get you from Thames Street to the beach, for example. Or you could go out, the trolley also went out Broadway and ended at 1 Mile Corner. The first interurban lines, and we talk about interurban lines being lines that go between more than one town, the first interurban line was the Newport and Fall River Street Railway Company in 1898. And the Newport and Fall River Street Railway Company came essentially out to East Main Road, down Park Avenue, and across the Stone Bridge. That's generally the route it went. And then there was another line that was developed about 6 years later, the Newport and Providence line. That was on the West Main Road, and it began to operate in 1904. And they went down to the Bristol Ferry. They had to come inland a couple places, like Raytheon Hill, for example, and also Turkey Hill, right out here, because the hill was too steep, and they had to get a little bit less of a grade so that the trolleys could make it. After all, the trolleys did go 10 miles an hour sometimes. That was high speed. They'd get in trouble for that probably. Okay, so but it was on the interurbans, it was a nickel a town, and you could go various places. Well, what comes about then is the establishment by the trolley company of a trolley park, an amusement park. And this is what my emphasis of my talk is going to be. A lot of other things have happened in Island Park as well, but I'm going to talk mainly about the 1897 to 1938 period when the amusement park really flourished. Okay. This is a view of the northern part of the island from the hummocks, from up on top of the hummocks. And one of the things that's really interesting about it, this is a picture that was taken before the 1912 stone bridge was built. And you can see on the left-hand side over here how vulnerable the stone bridge was, or the bridge that was there. It wasn't the stone bridge. It's really wide open. And we all know there's a wicked current that goes through there, and so it's pretty vulnerable. And there were many stone bridges. That's another story. As far as I know, there were at least 7 of them, okay, at different times. The one that lasted most lately in its career was built in 1912 and lasted until the 1954 hurricane pretty well beat it up. But you can see Gould Island out here. You can see a little bit of Island Park over here. Okay, and again, the beginnings of the colony at the hummocks. This postcard, and I've talked about him before in my other lectures, was done by a man from Fall River by the name of O.E. Du Bois. And you can tell his postcards because most of them have a printed name on. Sometimes he spells Portsmouth wrong, but the names are on there. You can identify them that way. And you'll see a number of those in this presentation. That's kind of a nice long view. And here's another long view. This one's taken from up on top of Butts Hill, up where the fort was, where the wind turbine is there. Looking down toward Island Park, Park Avenue goes along here, okay, and where later the dump was, and also where there was an airfield during Prohibition times that they used to go out and see where the Coast Guard was. These 3 houses right here were built for the workers on the trolley line when it was being installed. In 1898, 1900. Those 3 houses are all still there. But anyway, that shows the long view of Island Park that way. And one more long view, and this one's from Tiverton. Looking from Fort Barton up above the Tiverton Town Hall, again, you see the stone bridge is under construction one more time and had fallen apart. And there are 2 ferry boats right here, the Saunders and the West Side, that were used to bring people across. And they had a really, I have another picture somewhere of a really rickety dock on the Tiverton side where they would come over. You can see Valhalla right here, which was all open land. That was Henry C. Anthony's seed farm. Again, there was nothing there. You can see the outline of Chase's Lane. We all think, a lot of people think that the East Main Road runs right into 24. No, it changes to Chase's Lane for some reason. Don't ask me why. But you can see the tree line, it goes along here, and that's where the East Main Road is, and Chase's Lane. And again, that road was laid out about 1640. Okay. Common Fence Point, this was before the development, okay? Not very many houses there. Another view by Du Bois looking at Common Fence Point. Here's the view of the hummocks taken from the railroad bridge, or right next to the railroad bridge, the end of the railroad bridge, looking down. And the hummocks is there. It doesn't look quite as denuded as it does today, but again, cottages, and all of this, a lot of this was summer homes, summer cottages. Okay, yes?
The hummock Tiverton, Rhode Island.
I know.
Is that wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
It's almost from Tiverton, but yeah.
Tiverton might have owned it.
This is a postcard from probably about 1918, 1920, around there sometime. And yes, mistakes are made often. Almost every picture I've ever seen of Boyd's Windmill says near Newport, so there are a lot of things like that. And some of the postcards, again, like this one says hummock, and I think we call it the hummock, so that's why we changed the label underneath. Another view from the hummocks. Looking down. Again, this is a later one. Here you can see the stone bridge. It is a stone bridge, a metal bridge at this point, a steel bridge. This is probably, again, about 1920 or so. Okay. We're going to get to Island Park. Hold on. Okay. And again, one more long bird's eye view, as they say. You can see Spectacle Islands here and Hen Island over here. And then, again, it looks a little overdrawn over there, that part. These postcards, a lot of these postcards were colored like this in Germany. Germany was a famous place in the 1900s, 1920 period for making colorizing postcards. And one more looking the other way. Now here's the railroad bridge. This is the railroad bridge that was built, the second railroad bridge that was built probably about 1898, 1900. You have a train going across the bridge. The train, there was so much traffic. In 1913, there were 12 trains, passenger trains, into Newport and 12 out. Okay? And a lot of people that lived in Fall River worked in Portsmouth or vice versa. A lot of the people that worked at the Portsmouth coal mine, that's another lecture coming up, they lived in Fall River and took the train to work. And so the trains there were a lot of passenger trains. It's really unfortunate that when they did do the new Sakonnet roller coaster that we call the Sakonnet River Bridge over here, that they didn't put a rail line underneath. That thing really, the bridge isn't bouncing, it's just the way the base is. Anyway, so the train was used a lot for passenger traffic and continued to be so until 1938. 1938, the railroads went bankrupt and ceased passenger travel. They continued freight travel until 1988, when the railroad bridge was finally demolished, well, beat up enough that it couldn't be repaired. But it would have been nice if they put a rail line underneath the new Sakonnet River Bridge. But you can see some of the houses here, too, along the edge there. This is Hen Island. Hen Island was a number of things. It was the birthplace of a man by the name of Rudolph Haffenreffer. Some of you may remember that name, big brewmaster in Rhode Island. And I spoke to him at some length. He died maybe 15 years ago, but he was born on this island. It also was used as I think it's Baptist or Methodist, I'm not sure, sort of place to have seminars and things like that too. I think that's what this building is actually.
What is that?
Hen Island, out in the middle of the cove down here. This is really an interesting one. This is an aerial view, probably taken from a hot air balloon, but it shows you where the escape bridge was built, okay, right across here, much later, 1962, I think it was. But here's the road, here's Park Avenue, and going on to the stone bridge right here. Not much population out there. Here's the railroad bridge up here. Okay, that's really an interesting photograph, I think. It's detail is really good on that. A lot of what John left to the library were glass plate negatives, and I was in the photography business for some time and had a darkroom, and I printed a lot of these glass plates, and that's what has gone into the library's collection as well. Park Avenue. Okay. You can see the trolley tracks going along Park Avenue over on this side. I've analyzed this. This was one of the first 4 pictures I ever got of Portsmouth. I now have a little over 1,000 old images of Portsmouth. But I studied this one at some length, and this house with the 4 windows there is still there. But I think it might have been a little difficult to get your, I suppose, horse and buggy through this. But again, it shows you the area across as well over on the other side of Park Avenue, the east side, west side. Another view at the same time. Again, you can see the trolley tracks running along here. You can see also why some of these houses were a little bit vulnerable to hurricanes. Okay, and still are, I'm afraid. Street scenes are really kind of interesting. This again is probably in the 20s or so, but it's a really nice postcard of Park Avenue. And again, I have a number of things like this in here. Newly graded, no doubt. Let's see, yeah, the trolley tracks are there. The trolley tracks are this line right over here. A bird's eye view of Cedar Grove Avenue showing Spectacle and Hen Island, and also Hummocks and Island Park. Okay, that's what the caption says. Again, a lot of open space. Again, this postcard probably from, my guess would be probably right around World War I times. 1914, 15. One of the interesting things about the printing glass plate negatives. Glass plate negatives are extraordinarily sharp. We're all used to the fact that those of us who remember back when we used film, 35 millimeter negatives being about this big. And if you enlarge them very big, they just blot out. There wasn't much there. Well, what we're dealing with here are 4x5 glass plate negatives. And the detail is just incredible on them. I've printed a lot of them, and it's really amazing how sharp they can be. Someone gave me a 4x5 glass plate one time of a steamship tied up at Bristol Ferry, and we enlarged it to a 16x20, and you can see the hats that the women were wearing on the boat, and it's at the distance. It's really incredible. Here, I mean, this is a glass plate, and it's not as sharp on the screen as it is in front of me, but here's two people walking down Park Avenue here. The trolleys, by the way, when the trolleys came, they had to put up poles, and there's a lot of discussion in the town council records about, they want to put up another pole, they want to, do this and so on, and the town should have been a little more grateful that they were doing this, because what happened when they put up the poles for the trolley lines, ultimately that led to electrification of the town. They used the same poles and put in electricity. And as best I can determine, this was probably done over a period of time, but probably beginning somewhere around 1911, we got electrification. Here's the trolley tracks. Again, the rails look a little warped, but I guess they were okay, but going down along Park Avenue. And the seawall has been strongly embraced and supported by these three poles here. That probably didn't do it. This is a picture of Portsmouth Park, okay, over here, another community there, and the beach, obviously a little bit more substantial beach than we have today, with good reason, hurricanes, but the horse got the drink out of the river as well, so let's see, right here. Anyway. That's kind of an interesting one of Portsmouth Park. I don't think I have any other picture of Portsmouth Park as it was being built. Cottage Avenue. Again, one of the things that amazes me, and you'll see this when we get into the amusement park pictures, people really dressed up a lot. And I know a lot of the pictures that were taken probably were taken on a Sunday afternoon. But, I mean, it's just like, look at these. I mean, these people are all dressed up. And here. Plus, they're showing off their great fish capture here. They're at least this big. Again, it's really fun to look at a picture like this and wonder what was going on, you wonder what was happening. It's fun. The community house. Yeah. That same picture's in that brochure over there. Still there. Okay, Park Avenue itself had a lot of different names. It was called Charity Beach Road for a while. It was most often in early times called Ferry Neck Road because it went to the ferry. The ferry at Stone Bridge, the first ferry began there in 1640, 44, around there. And so it was a natural route coming from wherever you were coming from to go down Park Avenue to establish Park Avenue and then go down to the bridge. Keep in mind that until 1929, the Stone Bridge was the only bridge off this island. Okay, we had ferries at the other corners, but that was the only bridge. And I'll show you some pictures. I think there's some pictures in here. I'll show you one or two cars on the bridge at times, or horse and buggies even. Anyway, Ferry Neck Road, Green Farm, the whole area was called Green Farm at one point. It was called Bufham's Lane until in the 1880s and 90s. I'm not sure where that came from. I'm sure there's a Buffum family that probably had a house, substantial house somewhere there. Henry C. Anthony's house was at the top of Park Avenue. It's still there. It's been restored maybe 20 years ago. It's the first house on the left as you go down Park Avenue, down the hill. That was the center of his farm, and his farm was unbelievable. He had the farm there, and he raised crops so he could get seeds, and he was a seed grower. And he had farms in Canada, he had farms in Cuba, he had farms all over the place. He was a very successful man. Therefore, we made him our state senator for a while. Have to have prominence there. And he was a quite prominent individual, and his daughter was Elizabeth Wilkie, who some of you probably remember, died not too long ago. And in 1898, the Barker family built a carousel on the north side of Park Avenue in the vicinity of the bowling alley, right in that area. I think anybody from Island Park probably knows where that is. And also there was a shooting gallery next door to it. Okay, those were the first two amusement functions that were established there in Island Park. In 1905 and 6, they built a new carousel on the south side of Park Avenue. And this one was designed by Charles Loof. A Loof carousel was really something special. The horses were hand carved. They were really unique. And the Loof carousels, Loof was from Riverside, Rhode Island. And he has quite a reputation as being the most important carousel builder. Eventually other rides and games were added. We're going to see some of that. There was a dance hall, a shore dinner hall, and you could find a lot of souvenir stands and things like that. It was a real, wide open kind of amusement area. The Island Park Ballroom featured a lot of really important dance bands of that era. And they even had, in the 30s, they had what were called Australian heel and toe derbies. And what those were dance marathons. And they had to get a license from the town council. And I saw one where they had to have a license, and they applied for a license that was going to last 111 hours. God, imagine. Anyway, that was kind of a big show. There were other owners after the trolley company gave up ownership. And the trolleys, by the way, the trolleys went out of business, over a short period of time, but essentially in 1925. They quit operating, being replaced by the buses. They had jitney buses at first, which were small buses that would take. The thing about the buses, they could go anywhere. The trolley was stuck to the tracks. And so that's why the buses, and of course by that time we're getting the Model T Fords as well. And so the automobile and the bus put the trolley lines out of business. And the ridership declined dramatically on the trolleys. I gave you some numbers at the last lecture I gave about those numbers. They really were dramatically down. Other owners were Hyman Schwartz of Fall River. You may have heard of the Schwartz Lumber Company in Fall River. I think it's still there. And he owned it for a while. And then the Cashmans purchased it in 1925. And it became Cashman's Park. During Prohibition, my last lecture, Island Park was an easy place to find booze. Okay. A lot of speakeasies there. A lot of stuff was brought in right off the beach. The Coast Guard knew that, the state police knew that, but somehow they got around them. In some cases, they paid them off too. And so it was a favorite landing spot. There was all kind of activity that took place in the Sakonnet River, okay, which the Coast Guard referred to the entrance of the Sakonnet River as Times Square, because there was so much activity that came in and out of there. Okay. Back to the pictures. This is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful postcards that I have. It's the Barker's Carousel in Island Park. The carousel is inside this building. And the building on the right over there is the trolley station. Oh, here it is. Look at me. The trolley station over here. And the trolley stopped right there, and people could go to the carousel. And again, they had pretty good attendance, even with just the carousel and the shooting gallery. It really got busy, as you'll see in some of these pictures, thereafter when other things were added. Here's Park Avenue again, showing a lot of souvenir stands. You might not be able to read it. I can see novelty sale, novelty game, and so on, things like that along there. The things you'd find at most amusement parks. Here's the overview of the amusement park. I've used this slide before in others of my lectures. You have the roller coaster right here that I'll show you better pictures of shortly. It went for about 1/4 mile, and it was very steep. But again, here's the river. It's a little bit vulnerable. here's the carousel right here. And where this was, the center of this is on the right-hand side on Park Avenue, where the flea market used to be. Okay, that's Rhode Island directions, right in that area. And we also have, and I promised some of you I would show you the picture, we also have a little pond here that the diving horse dived into. Okay, there were all kind of games and things like that along in here. The shore dinner hall and the ballroom were here. It was really pretty substantial. It's really a big operation. And again, that picture was probably in the 20s, I would say. But look how dressed up everybody was. It must have been Sunday, okay, to go to the amusement park. And wonderful fashions. These pictures are, there's a series of these. These pictures are probably I would guess right around 1900, just from the clothes that people are wearing there. Here's another one, and don't you love this hat over here? This was in the 20s when there had been a severe storm, and this is storm damage up here. That's what caused that. It really got beat up pretty badly there. One of the things about the amusement park over time, and I'll give you some more numbers in a couple of minutes, storms, fires, hurricanes, I mean, it just really took a beating. And it's just amazing that it kept coming back. But it was a place, and I didn't mention this before, one of the things about trolley parks is that they located them at strategic locations. You have a trolley line that goes from Newport to the Stone Bridge and across the Stone Bridge, and then one from Tiverton to Fall River. And as I've mentioned before, you could go from Newport to Nashua, New Hampshire on trolleys, okay? And so the location of this, though, was significant to attract people from Fall River, from Newport, Middletown, et cetera. And so it was sort of put in the middle there. And that was the reason why the trolley parks, and the trolley parks built these trolley parks, the trolley companies built these trolley parks simply to attract ridership. And we perhaps should keep in mind, Newport had Newport Beach. Newport Beach had a roller coaster. The Old Mill it was called. I have pictures of that too. And it was kind of anchored in the sand, however. But we all know that Newport Beach, as with Island Park, is also vulnerable to storms and high tides and heavy waves and so on. And that didn't last very long. Newport, a lot of people look at Newport Beach and say, boy, that would be a great place to put a lot of stuff, boardwalk and things like that. They've done that a couple of times, and those bathhouses they have now are on top of concrete. I mean, that's what they had to do with them. But it would be a really kind of neat thing to have more of a boardwalk there with all kinds of things. But it's not bad the way it is, but it'd be nice. Now here's kind of an event at Island Park. What's happening here is a swim. They had a swim from Island Park Beach to Gould Island and back. A lot of current through there. I don't know if I'd want to do that swim. But anyway, that's what this is. The swimmers are out here in the water, and the spectators are lined up here. You can see the corner of the roller. You can see how high the roller coaster was. It got pretty high. And you also can see how close it is to the river, too. Okay. And again, Portsmouth Park in the distance, which by this time seemed to be a little more built up than the other picture I showed you. But that was a swim, and I think that might have another picture of that. Okay, here we are, the park itself with all the crowds, and I'm not sure what was Browning's 1001 Troubles.
It was a
Fun house? Okay.
They had all sorts of names from Bluebeard's Castle. They usually had mirrors, like props and spinny things that shocked people. That's what they usually had in those.
Good. Okay. And here you can see the tower from which the diving horse dived. Okay. Anyway, more on that in a minute. I know there's some people waiting to see the diving horse dive. I've talked about it before. This is the shore dinner hall at the park. Again, we are so indebted to this photographer, O.E. Du Bois, because of he just went everywhere. And a lot of his photographs, I've mentioned this before, but I did a book on him in 1983 because I had 65, 70 of his postcards, which are wonderful photographs, by the way. In terms of technology, they're really good. And I now have 570 of his postcards, covering Westport, Little Compton, Tiverton, Portsmouth, a few in Middletown, some in Jamestown, but for some reason he never went to Newport. I don't know why. I don't have any from Newport. But he was a good photographer. Okay, the first roller coaster was built in 1926, called the Bullet, and damaged 2 years later by a storm and rebuilt. And in that period of the 20s, Island Park was plagued by a lot of fires and bad storms. 1927 really witnessed the probably the most devastating fire. And that's not just the amusement park, that was a lot of the houses around as well. The Shore Dinner Company filed for bankruptcy in 1927 because they said there were only 30 good days that summer that they could get any profit. And in 1933, the dance hall and the beer hall were destroyed by fire. So, again, it was on the outs, by the late 20s, early 30s, and especially when the trolleys ceased running in 1925, it didn't get as many people coming. Here's the Bullet, and I want to call your attention to this. This pavilion. I'm not sure exactly. I guess it's where you get on the roller coaster because the next picture has that in a better view. But again, you can see it was a pretty impressive operation, and here's a man working on helping rebuild it right here. Okay. There's that same pavilion for the ridership of the Bullet, rather. And again, I'm not much of a roller coaster person, but I've been on some like that. And again, amusement parks were really a big thing when I was growing up. And every school, every section of our school all went on to amusement park on special days and so on. You may have heard of Kennywood Park, which is really still in existence and one of the really big ones in Pittsburgh. This is a great picture too, because this is from the top. I hope it wasn't while the roller coaster was running. But it shows you Park Avenue down here, okay? And it shows you Valhalla, what became Valhalla up here. But it's really and again, it's not as sharp on the screen as I have it in front of me. It's really a sharp picture. Neat. And a car, vintage, probably about 1925 or so, going down the street there. Now here's another view of the roller coaster, but this shows the Kiddie Rides, which were in front down here, all the little kiddie rides that they had there too. Again, it was a place for the whole family. This was really a big thing for families to do on a Sunday, Saturday, whatever, in the summer. Here's the Shore Dinner Hall and two stars posing. I don't know why they posed in particular, but this is a Du Bois postcard as well. It shows the Shore Dinner Hall. Now, you ready, Liz? You're going to see it now. Ready? The diving horse. Poor horse. We all know how vulnerable horses are. I mean, Kentucky Derby, they get beaten up so they die sometimes. That was an amusement entertainment. Okay? They had the platform, and the platform collapsed, and he had nowhere to go. Step into the pond. I knew that would get a reaction. Okay, let's move on. Your ancestors, don't blame me. Okay, here's another one of the carousel over here, and this is probably the trolley station. This was a little bit later. This was probably in the late 20s, maybe in the early 30s. Okay, another view, which again, you might not be able to read the stuff. I can read it here. A photograph gallery. Let's see, beverage, hot dog, horses put up and fed, Manhattan hot chowder, ice cream parlor, things like that, all along Park Avenue at that time. This is, again, this one with the horse and buggy there. This is probably right about the first decade of the 20th century. This is a postcard that was produced in Island Park. I'll let you look at it for a second and tell me what's going on. I think she's sharing her gum with him. You should see it here. She has there's a long string from her mouth to her hand. They divide with you in Island Park. Come on. Now, I'm not sure who this was. It's obviously some special group. It looks like a church group. This woman has a cross on her right here. It's probably a church group. One of the things I encountered in my research is a series of diaries, and I'm in the process of writing an article about them. They were written by a woman by the name of Abby Sherman. She was the mother of Arthur Sherman, whom some of you, I'm sure, remember, who was the town clerk for about 40 years. And she kept a diary from 1897 to 1931, and it's fascinating. She was the town gossip. I mean, you can find out who beat up whom and who was killed by whom and who fell in the lake and died, and Lizzie Borden died today. And she also goes into things like when she got the right to vote, because she said, now that I have the right to vote, maybe someday I'll be president. And one year she rhymed her diary, which was kind of interesting. She was a very active member of the WCTU, Women's Christian Temperance Union, so she was able to enjoy Prohibition enormously, although she still talked about, load of liquor seized at so-and-so's farm last night. She does a lot of that. But I can see her. She's probably in this picture. I mean, she was that kind of person that knew what was going on in the town. And one of the things we're doing right now is there's going to be a special edition of the Newport Daily News in August on the 375th, and I'm in the process of writing a series of articles, and one of them is going to be about her diary, so you'll hear more about her later on. But this is some kind of, ladies' society or something. They're certainly all dressed up, and this is certainly 1900 or even earlier, right around the turn of the century, just by the clothes that they're wearing. This is kind of an interesting one. I studied this one at some length trying to figure out what's going on. Here's the dance hall is in the background here, and I think they're playing croquet. I'm not sure. This guy is kind of straddling something here, and it wouldn't be golf. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, if you look close, you can. Yeah. Interesting.
Right here.
Yeah, right in here you can see.
It's the ball. One right over here.
Yeah. Don't fall over. Look out. Yeah. Well, they had numerous ones when they played that. But anyway, that's kind of a nice long view of again, Park Avenue going along here. Okay. That's before the roller coaster. They had a hot air balloon. I have several pictures of this. Tethered. They didn't fly it alone for obvious reasons. It's a little basket they're sitting in. They had these at the county fairgrounds too, up on across from where St. Barnabas later was built. Okay, the fairgrounds are up on top of the hill there. That's another story. We should do something about that sometime. County fair was a big thing from 1898 to 1932, run by the Newport County, by the Grange and other people. Okay. 3 balls for a nickel. Knock down the whole tray and you get a prize. Okay, and then next to it you have a wheel that spins here. These are all, and there's about, I have, in John's collection, there's probably about 6 or 7 of these kind of pictures of different games that were available.
What is this, beer or something in here? Bottles?
Well, there were bottles that were weighted so that you couldn't knock them over. But if you spend a nickel, you could try. These are a couple of the acrobats that were performing. Shy young lady here. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, this is a matchbook cover from Cashman's Park. Okay, probably in the 30s. This is one of my favorite pictures. I think this is a beautiful picture. Really, really nice. You could rent boats and go around. I don't know how far you'd get when you're still tied to the pier, but But it's a beautifully composed photograph. It really is. I think they were just posing. I don't think they were really going anywhere. Okay, and September 21st, 1938 obviously was a critical date. I'm going to be doing a lecture on around September 21st, 2013 on the 1938 and 54 hurricanes. And I have a couple postcards to show you just to sort of finish this up. And this is a message that was printed on the back of one of those postcards. Again, a postcard from 1938 probably, but I'm going to read it to you in case you can't see it. September 21st, 1938 will long be remembered as the date of the disastrous hurricane which swept New England, an upheaval of nature seldom if ever known in this part of the country. In its wake, it left behind a terrible death toll of 600, with another 100 persons missing. Nearly 6,000 homes were totally damaged, and the total damage amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. The fury of the wind crippled power, light, and telephone systems, uprooted hundreds of thousands of great trees and countless smaller trees, and wrecked an untold amount of boats and small craft. The author isn't cited, but it is a pretty interesting description of the 38 hurricane, which was a real horror because it surprised us. It didn't have a name, by the way, because they didn't start naming hurricanes until I think it was around 1953. But the 38 hurricane, everybody remembers.
Jim, did those figures, it said of New England, but did those figures apply just to this area, just to Portsmouth?
Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Somewhere, and the numbers that are given now, even later, as far as research and everything goes, the numbers that are given are normally somewhere between 600 and 800 people died. And there were 18 that died in Island Park. 18 people. Interestingly, almost all of them, and in John Pierce's book, he has a list of names and where they were from. Almost all of them were from Taunton, Fall River, elsewhere. And there is some question about whether it was 18 or 19 people that died. They did find one body several weeks afterwards. There are all kinds of stories. Tom Cashman told me a story one time. He died not too long ago. But he told me a story about he was coming down the hill, down Park Avenue, and the storm was about to hit. And so they told him he couldn't go down there. And his parents had loaded all of their belongings pretty much on the second floor of their house, fearing that it would, that the storm would really mess them up. They were right next to the park. They lived right on Park Avenue there. And so he deferred from going down, and the next day, or a couple of days later, when they were allowed to go in, they went down back to their house. But their house was sitting in the middle of Park Avenue. And the second floor was intact, and all their furnishings and belongings and everything they had taken up the second floor were still there. But the whole house was just swept off its foundation, that storm. It was a brutal storm. I mean, again, we can't evaluate dollars. I mean, that postcard said hundreds of millions. I mean, that's billions and billions today, if you try to convert that. The town, and I saw this in the town council records, the town asked the Public Works Administration, which was an agency of the New Deal, for $500,000 to help pay for the cleanup. And I never could find whether they got it or not. My guess is when you're dealing with the federal government, probably not that much. Anyway, so Island Park was devastated by the 38 hurricane. The whole amusement park gone. The roller coaster, splinters. And everything was across Park Avenue into the fields there and so on. And it was really had a devastating impact on the town, especially in that part of the town, other parts of the town as well. Newport got really beat up by it too. What happened was that there was a storm surge out in the Atlantic, and it came up the Sakonnet River. And it was, from most accounts, it was about a 12-foot wall of water that came up the Sakonnet River undeterred, and nothing stopped it until it got to Island Park and Park Avenue. And it just devastated. We've seen storm surges. We've seen storm surges in other storms later, not so much here as much, but other places. And we know the damage that they can do. Until they built the hurricane barriers in Providence, the storm surge flooded downtown. They had You've probably seen pictures of downtown Providence with just the tops of trolley cars showing that they had without the hurricane barrier. Then they decided decided right around 1954, about the time Carol hit, another hurricane, that maybe they should build some hurricane barriers. And that saved Providence from a number of other storms. The 54 hurricane also hit this area with a devastating blow. The thing that was different about the 54 hurricane was that it was, well, the big advantage was that they had the 38 hurricane. So they pretty much knew what to expect. Plus, probably more important, the 54 hurricane hit at about 11 o'clock in the morning, daylight. The 38 was late afternoon. And so, again, people could take a better warning about what was to be expected. And no one in Island Park, very few people in Rhode Island, died in the 54 hurricane. It did a lot of property damage. It wasn't as bad as 38, but it was bad. And of course, we've had other hurricanes since that, and we still talk about the vulnerability of our coastline, and people keep building houses hanging over the water. It's amazing. And so that's obviously a situation that devastated this part of Island Park, and here are just 3 postcards that show a little bit of that. This is a house sitting in the middle of Park Avenue. Okay. Another one. Okay. This one rolled over. I was very fortunate, and it isn't any of these pictures, but I was given a collection of photographs taken by a very important Newport photographer, Edith Coit Richardson. And someone gave me about 125 photographs that she took in a couple days after the 38 and the 54 hurricane. And that's going to be part of that lecture I'm going to do in September. But, and also someone else gave me a bunch of pictures that were taken during the 38 hurricane, mostly in Newport. But anyway, I'm going to show those in September. So there were 3 postcards here about Island Park. And there's another one that I couldn't put it in because it said Tiverton, but it's houses, boats, and everything else all piled up against the railroad bridge, and just devastating. But so there's a lot of that. Again, this is along Park Avenue. It was serious, and it was serious because it was unexpected. We've had hurricanes. We've had a lot of hurricanes in this area. We've had a lot since 1954. And we're probably all familiar with that, with a lot of them. But there was a great gale of 1815. There was a hurricane of 1869. There were a lot of storms that took place in this area that we would call hurricanes, but again, that term wasn't used until into the 20th century. But the devastation is apparent. Okay. So in conclusion, the northern part of our town really has played an important role in our history. As I mentioned at the beginning, it really is an important part of our town. It's great to see Founders Brook being recognized and located. Many years people didn't know it was there. They're already going into somebody's backyard when you drive down Old Boys Lane, right? But it really, it's important because it's where the founding took place. It's where the first settlers settled. It's where they had their first, it's where Anne Hutchinson and William Coddington knocked heads. And Coddington got so frustrated with it that he and his followers left and went to Newport and founded Newport in 1639. Newport is going to have its 375th next year. So you thought you were done with all this stuff this year. Anyway, we'll be hearing more about that. But Portsmouth has an enormous history. You can go to any section of the town and you can create, if you go over to the Carnegie Abbey Tower, that's where the coal mine was. Okay? We had a coal mine in Portsmouth? Yeah, we did. And all of this stuff that I've been talking about today, the gentleman farms, Glen Farm, Oakland, Sandy Point, Greenvale, and so on. Greenvale is about the only one that's still a gentleman's farm. But we're very fortunate that most of Glen Farm has been turned into a town park. We're really lucky to have that. But there's just an awful lot of history here. And I've been writing Portsmouth history since 1976. And nobody else is doing much of it. And we really want you to. So look into your neighborhood, your street, whatever. See what you can find. And come and see me. We'll get it published for you. But I think that we really can't lose this. We can't lose the sense of history that we have. And that's what the 375th is doing probably more than anything else. It's making us aware of the fact that we have a long-standing history. I mean, we were recently in Italy, and you start talking about, well, we're 375 years old. And they said, well, yeah, we were founded in 1410, you know, something like that. But a lot of people in the United States have no understanding, no appreciation. People in the United States, people in Rhode Island, don't have any appreciation for our history, and it's tremendous. There's so much of it, and it's really fun to look into it. So I really encourage you to do that, to get involved in the historical process, because there's a lot of stuff available, and I think our library has a great deal of information that could get you started. And if you can't find it there, call me. We'll work on it.
375 years ago, a group of dissenters from the Boston colony landed on the shores of Aquidneck Island. In 1638, they signed a compact to form the town of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. This year, Portsmouth is celebrating this anniversary with a series of events that started with a polar dive into the icy waters of the Sakonnet River on New Year's Day. The list of events has fun in store for the entire family. Town historian Jim Garman is doing a series of lectures to convey his wealth of knowledge of Portsmouth's history and to instill an interest in our citizens into the rich history of the town. Many other events are being planned, including a celebration weekend from August 29th through September 1st that includes visits of the Lord Mayor of Portsmouth, England, officials from Portsmouth, New Hampshire and Virginia, a grand parade, a polo match between the U.S. and the U.K., and a fun-filled family day at Glen Park. Don't miss any of these great activities and historical places of interest in the town. Information about the celebration and events can be found at the 375th website, www.portsmouthri375.com.